all of my clients make goals as a professional, as a person, because we forget about being a person, as a parent, and as a partner. We make goals in all of those areas. And so getting so close with the client in vulnerable spaces around career, it actually was some of my clients that were like, no, you're not done with me. I need you to come with me to come be my executive coach. And it was because of them leading me that I went, yeah, I'll totally do that. And I will say now, most of my clients are leadership executives, first time CEOs. These are people who want to do it well and right, honoring themselves. And then I still have my career people. I love those career people, but a lot of them, those actually, when we think about lead generation, that's actually often kind of like the training wheels of people being like, oh my gosh, I really like having Jackie in my life. And then a lot of them will, when we do offers, we help negotiate in professional development for a coach. And I always say, hey, it doesn't have to be me, but let's make sure we negotiate this in. And I would say, I mean, I think it's been 100%. They're like, no, it's going to be you. Like, you don't understand. And then from there, it's grown.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. Before Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7 and 8 figure career coaching businesses myself and consulted with 2 career coaching businesses that are now doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or just building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Regin, and today's guest is Jackie Hanselmann Sergi, an executive coach, certified conflict mediator, and the founder of Radical Spark Coaching. With over 15 years of experience guiding leaders from tech, education, and social impact sectors, Jackie helps individuals reconnect with their head, heart, and gut to lead with clarity and purpose. She is a certified core strengths facilitator, and she's on a mission to ignite transformation and empower courageous change, whether in careers, leadership, or life. And it's a pleasure for me to have her on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Jackie.
Thanks for asking me to be here. I'm really excited.
Jackie, tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to become a coach, an executive coach.
As I think back, I have always been in a space of really wanting to connect dots with people and helping them really understand what's possible for themselves. And I think it actually starts back from childhood. Being the child of a parent that was an immigrant that didn't speak English as their first language, it's very much something that you learn to do is kind of be the person that's coaching along, either your parent or someone else to connect with them. And so I think it started very early of kind of being that space, as well as, when I think about some of the work that I do is in the career space, like negotiating salary, thinking from abundance, honoring your gifts and skills. I actually negotiated my allowance when I was 3 with my dad. I had 3 older siblings who were teenagers. There was a big age gap between me and my siblings. However, I very early on was like, hold on, this 25 cents isn't mapping to the dollar that they're getting. And I actually created a really thoughtful guide to my dad, who was a military man, and had a very good way of coaching him to see that it wasn't equitable. And I, at the age of 3, got the same salary or allowance as my siblings. And so I think I've always had a bit of this very logical space of being able to identify ways to figure out how people could be protected, grown, or developed, or ways to stand up for a situation and drive it towards impact. A bit of that space is really maps to my value system. So I think it's always been a part of me. When I was 9, I started working in a family restaurant, and even there I became a trainer. I think my first bit of doing that was being a trainer. So I was the 9-year-old teaching people how to run the restaurant, to serve tables. I was doing books. And then when I was 15, I got a legal job where I worked for a major restaurant chain. And by the time I was 16 or 17, I was a corporate trainer. And so I was opening up shops. So it's always been a part of that. The funny thing is my mom actually worked at the same restaurant, the corporation. So there were times where I had to be my mom's own supervisor. And I'm going to tell you, my mom was the worst employee that I've ever had. And it was just always an interesting space to be uncomfortable like that. And I think all of those pieces give you a wide scope of how I believe many of us have been coaches, or we have those skill sets, but being able to find a career where you can actually hold space for others and be able to use the skill set, it's really, really magical. And I don't take for granted that I get to do this every day, especially since I really, for a long time there, I didn't think coaching was like a real job. And I say that from a place of humor, but when I was thinking about making this leap, I was talking to my phenomenal executive coach because I was in this time of transition and I was doing all of this coaching in my work as a leader. I worked at an executive search firm with my candidates, with my clients. I was like taking on this unofficial coaching stuff. And I remember saying to her, gosh, like I love this so much. And she was like, why aren't you coaching? You have all the gifts and skills. You're doing it, but you're not being paid for it. And I said, because it's not a real job. And she just laughed because it didn't feel like, why would I get paid to do something I loved or that I always do? And she then helped me understand this other world. And she's like, you can go get training for this. This is a real job. She's like, P.S. I get paid a lot of money to talk to you. And I was like, what? You get paid to talk to me? And so it was this aha moment where I assumed it wasn't possible. I think that's sometimes what we forget is it is possible. And sometimes we're the people that hold ourselves confined into these boxes of shoulds and coulds. And for her to be like, go try it. And then being vulnerable and going to try it and realizing, my gut was right. I do love this. So, a long way of saying, I think it's always been a part of me. And it wasn't until I gave myself permission to actually honor that gift did it really kind of become a real thing.
And now it's been many years. How did it actually start?
It started a lot, I think it's always been a part of my DNA, but Radical Spark coaching really has been, we're kind of in our 8th year, kind of 9-ish year. It's a beautiful story around having that conversation with that coach and going, okay, she went to an organization called CTI. At the time, it was called Coactive Coaching. And she's like, you should look at it. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm managing a team of 10. I'm doing all this stuff. I love coaching. I'm going to invest in me. And so I have to preface this with, I was a newer mom. I had a 2-year-old daughter, right? I was managing a team. I was also in charge of a big book of business for executive search firm. It's one of the best search firms in the country at the time. And I was like, I'm going to go do this. And so I signed up for CTI. I go to Seattle. This is one of my first times away from my 2-year-old, right? And I'm there doing something for me. I'm sitting in fundamentals going, this is fantastic, but I don't feel good. So at about 4 a.m. of my first night away, I'm in Seattle, I find out I'm pregnant with my second child.
Wow.
Yup. So Amazon was nearby. They brought over some trail mix, eyeshadow, and a pregnancy test, and they handed it to me in the morning. And I had this it was kind of that aha moment. It was my radical spark that, oh my gosh, I'm about to have a second child and I want to be a coach. I need to figure this out. And so I then knew I needed to finish this up. And so I ended up shifting my whole timeline. I had a pretty distinct timeline considering I knew, oh my God, I'm going to have a baby. So I switched my training to actually do CTI in Canada. And I think that was one of the coolest experiences to do was to go and do a coaching training program in a different country. I think that has been also one of my greatest gifts to myself was to get out of the American approach to coaching at times and being able to be and have a bit of a worldview because I was in Vancouver, BC, and it wasn't just Canadians. People were flying in from all over the world to be a part of this cohort. And it was such a gift, but I would go up there every month, more pregnant, and more pregnant. And so I was able to have a little bit more of a timeline. And I think that was a gift. So I didn't kick the can down the road, like one day I'll get there. It was kind of that moment. And it was through that coaching moment of the aha that I realized that my life purpose was to be, the guide to help others ignite the spark of possibilities. And so, I was like, what am I going to name my firm? It was like Radical Spark. It was a radical idea for me to think about this. It was a big spark. And then also the name of my child is Luca, which in Italian means light, because they were, and they are one of my bright radical sparks. And so that's kind of where it started. And, I had such a great boss. I'm going to give her a shout out. Katie Bouton at the time, she knew this was my thing. She had known me earlier in my career when I worked in philanthropy. And she was willing to grow out a coaching practice at her beautiful firm. But it was for me, it wasn't necessarily, didn't make sense for the org. And I remember just having just a very transparent conversation with her, and like being like, I need to graduate. I want to go try to do this. And she gave me a full blessing and even was like, I'm happy to send business your way. I still send her birthday texts. Like, there's power in clarity. There's power. I think clarity is kindness and it's harm reduction. And so just being so transparent from a place of self and honesty really has helped me be able to launch this business and to have people in my corner.
So right now you're basically celebrating two birthdays, Luca's birthday on one side and Radical Spark Coaching on
I
the
mean, it really does kind of like you can backwards map it pretty easily. Yeah, I think about that all the time. When people ask me how long has your business been, it's a bit of a cheat because I'm like, how old is Luca? Okay, add a couple of months to that. Yeah.
So interesting. Thanks so much for sharing your story. Is there any specific group of people that you typically work with?
Yeah, that is such a great question because I think as you're an earlier coach, this is kind of that journey where you have to have patience around or like, who are my people? And it's not just the coulds or the shoulds of the folks or like, what's the market? It's like at the end of the time, as a coach, who do you fundamentally want to spend your energy with and like holding space for? So I think identifying who your people are is important and it's an evolving practice. At this point, I can really see my journey and the way in which I created Radical Spark Coaching to be a space that didn't exist for me when I was an executive leader. For me, I also had a big bias towards coaches because during the time in which I was coming up with like my earlier career, coaches were not coaches. They were consultants. And oftentimes they were the people that you thought were coaches, but you might have shared things with them. And then that came around and was not necessarily held in confidentiality. And it was really detrimental, I think, to some cultures where people thought this person was a coach and it's actually a consultant that came in. And so I had a little bit of a bias towards that. And also being a woman of color, being a woman, there are a lot of barriers to being seen and being supported at times. And so when I thought about who are my people, how can I create the good in the world that I wished was there for me? I identified that I wanted to create a practice that primarily focused on leaders who identified as women, leaders who identified as people of color, and leaders who were working parents. There are so many layers to all three of those pieces that we have to be able to address and we have to be able to support that just didn't exist. And so I identified that those were the key areas. And I would say about like 95% of my people, I would say might even be more now that I'm in like year 8.5, fall into one or more of those areas. And I also have a lot of clients that fall into the LGBTQIA kind of space as well. Those are really important places that I believe need to be recognized and supported, and they are a part of the fabric of the workspace. People don't silo very well, and if we don't acknowledge those other pieces of them, I think that's a part of the problem.
I really love that. And it's actually the case with most coaches that I interview is generally the target audience that they try to reach is who they were at a certain point, or like, and just like you said, you wish you had something like Radical Spark Coaching at a time that you could go to, and receive coaching from them. So now you create it for the others. So I really like that. And right now, by the way, do you have a team still, or?
That is the great question because I always talk about Radical Spark as its own entity. And I think PS coaches, everyone should have, your coaching practice is a part of your work. It's actually you're an employee for it. So that way you can take vacations and things. It's the global Radical Spark. It's like the royal we. I intentionally am the main coach for Radical Spark Coaching. And I do have an assistant who's phenomenal. Shout out, Suzanne. You're awesome. Who handles a lot of the scheduling and some of the administrative stuff. And there's a real reason for that. There are coaches who want to build and have, and I know some great coaches who've built out practices where they have a variety of coaches to do that. Sometimes I get great work and I will partner with other coaches or other consultants. However, here's what I know to be true about me. I'm a really, really dedicated manager. I care about the people I work for. And when I was managing large teams, I was focused on them, and that was where I was focused. I found so much joy being an individual contributor and being able to be the coach and to be able to like go and do my stuff, that the thought of bringing on more people, I'm not going to be able to be the coach the way that I want to coach. I'm going to be focused on the people that I hire and making sure they're good and they're being great coaches. And so, I'm not going to say it's not something that I might do in the future, but it's like not in my plan. I want to be able to like do what I love, and I want to be able to be a part of it.
And I really like that. And so right now, basically, you're the only coach, and you have an assistant as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, again, shout out to Suzanne. Where do you find your clients? So what marketing channel works for you right now?
Yeah, I think it's a variety of ways in which, I've grown my clients. One of the great gifts that I've had is that I've forever believed that relationships are capital, and that people don't always remember what you do, but gosh, they remember how they made you feel, how you made them feel. And like, that's so important, right? Both feelings and facts need to be integrated into ourselves. And so in that space that I've always kind of been a bit of a coach or a support or someone that's able to kind of hear things and get things done, I had a lot of people that I had conversations with. When I was an executive recruiter, I was kind of notorious for coaching candidates or clients to have a great experience. And I remember one of my partners, the boss partners, would laugh because I was one of the only executive recruiters who would get gifts from people that I declined. And it was because I made them feel safe, seen, and heard, and as well as gave them, they were humans who were being vulnerable, like finding a new role or a job interview and things like that. That is like such vulnerability, and you have to treat them in such a way that you can't like be crappy to them, right? And so, when I first started doing this, I thought, oh, it's going to be career. So Radical Spark initially was like the very easy transition. I'm going to do career coaching. Even though I'd done so much executive coaching, I was a executive assistant to the head founder of a major foundation, and I got to be his right hand person. And being able to manage up and manage down was such a gift for me, but it gave me so much insight. And so, what people remembered when I was thinking about doing this was a lot of people had me as their recruiter. So when I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm going to go do this, it was a no brainer. I want to work with you. My first channels were also tapping into previous relationships. The organization that I had worked at, it was called the Broad Foundation, and they had this beautiful program called the Broad Residency and the Broad Academy. And what they did at the time was providing ways for people who maybe were from corporate spaces or from other walks of life to be able to contribute to the education system. So they had a cohort experience and a residency. They also provided coaching. And so reaching out to them after I got my accreditation, because you know what? Accreditation was really helpful for me. Yes, I had been coaching a lot throughout the time, but having those letters behind my name gave me a little bit of confidence. Also, it made sure that I knew that I had to like keep learning and like code of ethics. I'm a big fan of it. But reaching back out to them and them going, yeah, we remember you. You're great. Do you want to be a part of our coaching bench? When I locked down, and it was also like a coming home for me because I loved that organization so much, then to be able to be a coach for them. When I got that, I was like, yeah, I can do this. I can launch this. And so when I'm thinking about leads, I think first and foremost, understand who your people are and stay true to yourself. Also, stay true to the way in which you want to connect with people. One of the things that I see is like people go, oh, this person, does this style. And so I have to be like that. As a coach, you have to be a grounded human and know who you are because you are holding the stability for a lot of people who need you to be the stable force in that really rough day. Right. And so reaching out to people, not from a place of scarcity, but from a place of excitement, like, hey, I'm going to go do this. Also, one of my first clients on the executive side, she had gone through a transition with her job, and we were coaching, through my previous job. I was helping Teach for America. It's an organization. They were doing a good bit of, outplacement coaching. A lot of their executives were making transitions, and there was one that I was coaching, and I really enjoyed it. and she was looking for a job. And then she was like, God, I have this crazy idea. And I said, I love crazy. And this is something I say to a lot of people, tell me your crazy idea. And we can still look at like the practical stuff, but tell me crazy. She's like, gosh, what if I started this organization that provided like virtual chiefs of staff and like did all of this stuff? And, it's kind of like the interim role, but like fractional support. And I said, gosh, Maddie, I think that's such a brilliant idea. I'm about to go launch my coaching business. Would you come be my first client? Because I believe in this idea. You're going to be the leader of it. You don't have to pay me. Take a chance with me. Let's see if I can actually do this coaching thing. And you can pay me when you start making money. And she's like, absolutely, Jackie, let's do it. And like, I'm so proud of that. And I can share that because she's written about this conversation, or she's written about this experience of working with me, because that crazy idea was the thing. And now it is a beautiful, large organization called V-Chief that you can go look at, that's grown, that has a full team and a staff. And like Maddie, it came from a crazy idea. And Maddie is doing such good work by providing the service for wonderful humans to be helping, a variety of sectors. And so I think that's the other thing is take the chance and make the ask for people. Also being really clear to ask people in your network who already believe in you to share with them like how you are going to be coaching. I think the other piece of it is to stay connected. There are conversations that I have with people that it's not the right moment for them, or maybe I'm not the right coach, but I always try to leave people better than I found them when we have conversations. And so I've had numerous new clients come in, people I have to go look at my notes and be like, who did I talk to? Because they had such a great experience of just chatting with me. I wasn't their coach, but they're telling their sister-in-law, or they go now manage at an organization and go, yeah, we need to bring Jackie in to be the leadership coach. Another way that I've got clients, that referrals, I would say almost all of my clients are referrals. And that is a beautiful place to be. I also make sure I stay in touch with my previous clients, right? I send holiday gifts. I send special gifts. I send flowers when I see on LinkedIn that they're getting promotions. Like, I think that goes a long way for people to just kind of be a part of their leadership journey with them, for them to recommend you out is the greatest gift. The other thing is I try to find moments where I can speak at a conference where I know that people are going to be there. And when I'm at the conference trying to do a value add session, but also, for instance, with Peak Grant Making, I offer, coaching there through their umbrella. It was something that they piloted, was bringing in some great coaches for their membership. And it's at an extremely discounted rate, but it's just such a great way to introduce people who maybe don't have the professional development funds right away, or have never worked with a coach, to have a free coaching session with like a real coach. Like, that's another thing that I think is important, is be open to opportunities that maybe aren't the high dollar thing, but that could actually be like opportunity cost opportunities to like meet people and see and try new things with leads. I personally am not, just my personality is one where I want to be as me as possible. So I'm not going to necessarily be like going the route of marketing myself a lot. I market Radical Spark a lot. I let my clients tell their stories, and I'm always amplifying them. But I think the best thing you can do with leads is to do a good job. Be a good coach. If you are a good coach and you are helping people feel as though this was a wonderful investment of time, talent, and treasure, they're going to tell people. And I think you have to actually ask them to tell people. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, by the way, I can tell that I can see why people keep coming back to you and keep referring to other people. You have a beautiful energy when you're talking, and like, and for people who are going to watch this, for example, Jackie came from a client call. She's going to another client call, but she has so much energy even for this podcast. And I think you potentially could do more podcasts. So this is kind of like a marketing method in a way where it's the real you, right? It's not
Yeah, like this is who I am. I mean, I think
yeah.
that's also really important. And I like talking about this stuff. It's important. And like I started at 6:30 a.m. today. Like I work East Coast hours, and so I'm based on the West Coast. So I've been on since 6:30. But when we're talking about something like coaching or new coaches thinking about, gosh, how do I grow my business? I think it's important to talk about quality over quantity. And I think that's important. I know the dollar and making money is important. However, at what cost? So one of the things I want to say to newer coaches is no is an acceptable answer. Like there are going to be conversations when you're thinking, gosh, I need to make money. And I get that, but you have to be fully aware that your gut knows if this is the right person for you or if this is the right experience. And I think that's one of the biggest things I tell newer coaches is you're going to take on some clients that you're going to be very clear were not your people. And then there are going to be some clients or some projects that you might know will be more work. So how do you ensure you create, an engagement cost that maps to it being a good use of your time? I talk about the PITA fee. Have you ever heard about a PITA fee?
No, I haven't.
It's a pain in the ass fee. So if you know this client is going to be a pain in the ass or it's going to take a little bit more space, then now they map to my PITA fee. I don't take as those, but I think it's real. I think we have to have these real conversations so that you can choose to be with this client knowing they might be a little bit of like a handful, but gosh, if I do this, what does it net towards? Versus feeling like I have to be with them because then that's going to put you in a triggered space. And so I think that's an important thing is no is an acceptable answer. No is a complete sentence. And it's okay to refer someone out. I've been in a conversation where I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this client. We do our introduction call and like we're on our second call and I've thoughtfully sunsetted and graduated clients and been like, I see where your goals are and things, what? It's fundamentally we're not aligned on our approach and things. But guess what? Here's who I think you should work with. I'm going to offer you a refund and things like that. I think that is also one surprising to people because I'm doing it again with such a humanity space. But also, I think it's important to understand you get to work with coaches for a variety of reasons. And there are some coaches that are for a season, there are coaches for a reason, and there are coaches for a lifetime, right? And so it's the same thing with relationships and jobs. And so I don't take it personally. Like I think it's wonderful for some of my clients to graduate. It's a delight. But actually, the graduation is how I grew my business. So I started with these clients with careers. I was keeping them honest. We're identifying, what are their non-negotiables, their value system, their goals, their legacy, how they're, all of my clients make goals as a professional, as a person, because we forget about being a person, as a parent, and as a partner. We make goals in all of those areas. And so getting so close with the client in vulnerable spaces around career, it actually was some of my clients that were like, no, you're not done with me. I need you to come with me to come be my executive coach. And it was because of them leading me that I went, yeah, I'll totally do that. And I will say now most of my clients are leadership executives, first-time CEOs. These are people who want to do it well and right, honoring themselves. And then I still have my career people. I love those career people, but a lot of them, those actually, when we think about lead generation, that's actually often kind of like the training wheels of people being like, oh my gosh, I really like having Jackie in my life. And then a lot of them will, when we do offers, we help negotiate in professional development for a coach. And I always say, hey, it doesn't have to be me, but let's make sure we negotiate this in. And I would say, I think it's been 100%. They're like, no, it's going to be you. Like you don't understand. And then from there, it's grown.
So I'm so curious, what are the goals they're working towards for the next 1 to 3 years with your business with Radical Spark Coaching?
So one of the big things that I've been thinking about is I'm often on a wait list for clients and it's kind of become funny. Everyone's like, she's on a wait list. And because there's reasons I'm on a wait list. Yes, I'm a very good coach, but also I want to live what I coach. And a lot of that is work-life harmony. There is no balance. Let me just be clear. Work-life balance is a crap term. Balance means equal. There is no equal. Okay. It's work-life harmony. And so for me, in order to be the engaged parent and partner and person that I want to be, I work 4 days a week. I don't work on Fridays. I work from 6:30 a.m. to 2:30. And so I build my life around that. I also take a summer sabbatical, which all my clients know about because I want to be the best coach for them. So I need to also be restorative. And so as I'm thinking about growing out my work, I realize not everyone, especially right now, we're in a unique time where people are really reevaluating what's going on in the world with themselves, especially with career, or we have people who thought their careers were set that are just suddenly like, it's gone, right? And it's not because you did anything wrong. It's just the state of the world, the country, systems, the lack of systems. And so I know that I have limited space, right? And during the day, also, there's a price point that comes with coaching, right? You have to be able to map to not just the market, but like there's money involved, and that's tight. And so I had a really thoughtful like reflection. And this year I'm doing things that I've people have asked me to do for years and I've never done it. So in the next 6 months, we're going to be launching a Radical Spark course that is going to be self-led, that's career focused. I've, over the last 8 years, have created some really great documents that are reflective, they're fun, they're engaging. And so being able to think of a self-led program where like you said, I'm talking to people. I just talked my way through the documents, and I think they're going to get the essence of me, better or for worse. They're going to get that. My editor has laughed because I started singing in between questions, and she's like, I'm going to edit that out, but I almost want to leave it in. But trying to make it fun, but also trying to make it something that people can approach, right? When most people are thinking about their jobs and things like that, it's not during the workday because they're just trying to survive and tolerate. So I wanted something that someone could open up at 11 p.m. at night. You got the kids down. I have some space for me. Oh my God, what am I doing with my life? What is my career narrative? What are my non-negotiables? How do I approach my LinkedIn? Oh my God, what am I doing? I wanted to create that. So that's happening. And then I want to show you something fun. Everyone gets to see me lean over. This is fun that you asked me this because this is new and I'm so excited about it. I feel like the world's really dark and it's not that pretty. And a lot of my clients, I talk about approaching the world from a place of curiosity, compassion, and trust. And trust is not in people, but trust in yourself. And so a lot of my CEOs and managers and leaders talk about, gosh, I wish I had your questions. Because I ask a lot of big questions and I give them cheat sheets because people, big thing in leadership, we assume we know the right answer without actually getting data around the gaps. Ask the question, people. And so I had a leader say, I wish I had you in my pocket. And I said, huh. And so one night as I was putting my daughter to sleep, I was sitting there and I was like, what if I was in their pocket? So I sat and I wrote 100 questions. And I just like, what are my favorite questions to ask? Or if I was a leader, thinking about the variety of learning styles and relationship awareness work that I do, like people are going to be motivated by certain questions. And I decided to create something called the Radical Sparkle Deck. And it's brand new. It's about to go on my website. Like you're first to see it. And so this is my prototype, and it's 10 questions. And it's for like managers, it's for leaders, or it's just for people. And so here are the 10 sections. Aren't they pretty? They're pretty. And they're color coded. And they have 10. So there's questions in 10 sections. The first one is self-reflection, action, gratitude, creativity, vision, confidence, relationships, growth, expand, and possibilities of yes, which is a framework that I use, is really, most of us know what we don't want, but what do we actually want? And how do we set the parameters of the possibilities of yes from a place of abundance? So that's why that's a term on here. And I've been actually piloting it. I got a couple of these and I went to a conference and some of my leaders were there and they love them. And also coaches, this is a great tool for coaches to be able to use. I have a few coach friends that used this at the end of a session or even to start a session. They had the person flip a card and to see what it was. And so this is like what I started with a 10 pack. And then one of my leaders was like, Jackie, I need a 30 pack. I need to be able to do this like for her, she's doing it with her team, but also she flips a card. She wants to flip a card every day. Or this gives you plenty of icebreakers. Like nobody likes icebreakers. Like, I mean, maybe some people do, but like, what if you actually started with like a real question that everyone learned something from each other? And so I decided to make a 30 pack. And so like, I'm gonna flip a question for you. So this is gonna be your question.
Yes.
Let's see. What does resilience look like for you today?
Resilience. Wow, that's a strong question. Well, being resilient, yeah, for me as a podcast host, like I have to have resilience, obviously. And yeah, I generally do quite a few episodes, even on a daily sometimes. So yeah, being resilient and making sure at least that all of my guests are like as happy as you are, and I really, I really appreciate the energy. I usually do get a lot of energy from the guests that I have on the show, and I can tell right now that I'm getting a lot of energy from you. So I really appreciate that. But how would you, could you explain to me a little bit more? Because I'm a little bit confused with this. So let's say you have that. How would someone use that on a daily?
Well, on the daily, this is something that as a person who's in their growth space or they're trying to really connect with kind of what's possible, it's 30 pack. So every morning you could take one out, and this is your journaling. I have a leader who right now has a 10 pack, and every week she flips a card, and that is her. The question is what's guiding her reflection, but also what she's trying to live into that week, right? So, for instance, what will you say no to without guilt today? And that is her. She reflects on it every day, but she also goes, gosh, what am I going to say no today without guilt? And so it's a growth model. It's a way to actually put yourself back into the conversation, but also, thinking about how I just asked you that question, I just learned a good bit about you around resilience. I learned that how you approach your podcast. I learned that you talk to numerous people during the day. So it actually gave me more connection with you, but also I learned a little bit about you. And you had to think about it for a second. You're like, gosh, what is resilience? And then now you have an awareness that you've been resilient today without
Yeah.
actually noticing that. So that's how these work. You can use these with like one-on-one conversations as a leader, as a coach, or as a team question, or just as a human by yourself. And so I'm really excited about them. They're really pretty. The people that I've kind of shared them with, they love them. And I'm excited to put something pretty in the world, just a little something radical.
And I really like that it's physical, right? Everybody could just like do that with some
This
automation.
fits in your pocket. Like that
Yeah.
was the other thing is I wanted something that fit in your pocket. This one's a little bit bigger, but it's 30 of them.
Yeah.
So
Are you thinking like different versions at like different times? Maybe you make up new questions or you
yeah,
like,
so I have over 100 questions, right? So I
oh,
kind of have built ahead. And so with the 10 pack, I actually intentionally mixed them up. So every 10 pack's not going to be the same, but you're going to get one from each section. The 30 pack is all of them. So we're going to start with 30. We have enough to do additional versions as well as like these journals. So these are my gift that I give to my clients. Like, so every year, for a good number of my clients, I do a holiday, I do a Thanksgiving card because I want to tell them I'm thankful. And then for some, not all, I try to thoughtfully give a gift. And this has been the number one thing people have loved is this journal because again, I think tactile. I think people like the touch is so important. So it feels good. I send this. They get a Radical Spark pen. Like this is the most asked for thing. And when I do site visits with leaders or I'm at a conference and leaders are there, they're like, can you bring me another journal and a pen? So I'm going to put those on the site too. And so it should be up in the next like month or two, maybe by the time this podcast is there. And so people can get the 10 pack, they can get the 30 pack, or they can get a journal, or they can do like a journal and pack. I just figure like that's the other thing as a coach, you got to diversify your revenue streams as you do this. And so this is me trying to think of other ways to have impact that maybe aren't just me talking to them. Because gosh, if I was a brand new manager and I didn't know how to like open up a conversation with someone to connect with them, having a card like this could really be transformational.
thank you. Thanks so much for sharing
Thanks
all.
for letting me. I didn't realize I could talk about it, but yeah,
Yeah.
these are brand new. They just came in.
I love them. And I think that goes back to what you said earlier, that people remember how you make them feel. And these, like what you just shared now, they're going to remember how you made it. They're going to think about you. They're going to remember how you made them feel. So it's always a reminder for them that, yeah, you're there and you have those questions. And yeah, I really like that.
And they can buy them for their like. I have some CEOs that I want to buy these for my management teams. I want them to have it because they're great questions, but it's also like they know, like it makes them think of me, but also think about our time together. And I just think they're pretty. They're pretty too.
They are
So I'm
pretty,
excited.
especially the color coded, really like that. I want to get a little bit vulnerable with you. What are
Sure.
some of the biggest challenges you faced in scaling your coaching business or that you're still facing today?
One of the things is definitely capacity and pricing, I think, are some of the toughest parts, right? The pricing doesn't necessarily map to the quality or the things of that nature. And so it can be a really interesting place to start to want to be comparative, right? And I think comparison is a thief of joy because at the end of the day, you're always in competition with yourself. However, you also have to understand the equity state of making sure you are also charging in an equitable way that maps to both the market, because there are places that if you don't charge enough, they're like, she must not be a great coach, right? And then there's also places where it's just fundamentally not going to map to their budget. And so I think being able to understand pricing and understand what maps to both the equity, your experience, I think that can sometimes be a challenge. For me, I have some clients that still pay early days pricing. There's a couple of them still, right? Because I want to keep working with them. I also, there are certain people that I give a different pricing to because I fundamentally want to work with this organization or I want to work with this person. But in general, I think that pricing can be something that's really interesting, but also, navigating the variety of other coaches. Like there are some coaches that sometimes I hear what they're charging and I'm like, what are you doing at that price point? Like, and it's amazing. I'm also like, good on them. Like, great for you. And, that can be throwing off the equity of things too, right? I probably get more often than not that I should be charging more. And I can, and I know that I can, but for me, when I'm thinking about the people I want to work with, leaders who identify as women and people of color and working parents, there is often a pay gap there. Like they're often, we were thinking at, marginalized areas or areas of things like that, their pay level is usually at a different point, or they have other places they are pouring into, right? As much as I'd love to do coaching, but I also got to pay for daycare. I got to think about all these other pieces. And, people of color and women are typically, we got a gap here, right? So when I'm thinking about holding true to the people I want to work with and serve, I have to be very understand the tension of pricing, right? And I can't undersell, but I have to be able to navigate it. And I have grown in pricing, and with where I am right now, I'm very happy with that. But also sometimes I work with corporate clients who can pay more, and I will charge them, right? Oh
Mhm.
yeah, coaches, before you like give your pricing, ask the organization what their budget is. Don't assume they don't have it, right? Because sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, we've budgeted this much for coaching," and then you're quietly like, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money." Or sometimes you're like, "What? No, I don't know who you're hiring, but that is not an equitable rate." And so I think that is a big part of like the tension that I feel is especially early on, because I know I'm a good coach. Like I'm a darn good coach and I love it. And I have like the people who will attest to that, but I don't want to be at a price point where it's just an elite thing either, right? And, so I think that is the tension for me is being able to serve the people I want to work with while also being able to like pay for my kids to be in school and to have that. I think it's a part of really being able to center around that.
Yeah, I really feel that. And that I actually connects with your capacity issue as well, because like obviously if you were to have lead pricing, you would have more capacity in a way. And since you're doing all the coaching yourself, I want to end it on a good note and have like maybe a final advice for any other coach who's watching. Do you have any
Yeah.
final advice?
Here's the biggest thing I want to tell a new coach is you can absolutely do this. You have to be able to connect your head, heart, and gut. And at the end of the day, set an intention around what is success for you in this journey, because there's going to be a lot of external noise of what you should be coaching, what kind of coach you should be, how much you should be making. At the end of the day, this is about you being real to you and you honoring your gifts and skills. And I think that's easy when we're in a time of like scarcity or conflict to kind of go into the shoulds and coulds and what, what's expected of me. But I really encourage you to like one, always stay learning, always be curious and like stay true to who you are, and you know who your clients are, and it's okay to say no.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, Jackie. And for anyone who wants to find you or connect with you, they can find you on your LinkedIn, Jackie Hanselmann Sergi. They can connect with you there. There's also the option of the website,
Yep.
radicalsparkcoaching.com. Is there any other way people can connect
Yeah,
with you?
those are the best ways to be able to connect with me. I don't really do social media. It is, again, that's great for some coaches, but if I'm going to do that, that's going to take way more of my attention. And so I really think my website is great. My LinkedIn, I am often posting new jobs for people. That is, I think, why most people follow me on LinkedIn, is because I see so many jobs and I'm posting and reposting them. But yeah, give me a shout out at Radical Spark Coaching, the website, or come say hi and connect with me on LinkedIn. I think the world needs great coaches, and I believe in community, not competition.
This was great. Thank you so much, Jackie.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. To learn more about Purple Circle, our community, and how we can help you grow your business, visit joinpurplecircle.com.